You're watching Publicly Speaking. I am Diane Kimbrough. You guys know how we like to do it on PSDK. We like to introduce to you who you don't know, but who you need to know. If you were ever interested in getting into the industry of music, engineering, working the board, you don't want to miss this interview. We have a fantastic gentleman. You have to meet this guy. His name is Mr. Mickens. Who is Mickens?
Just a simple guy, really. It's not very in-depth, but I'm a music producer. Started as a musician, and I've been doing it professionally for about the last 15 years.
Okay.
So I've worked with some pretty notable artists and been a musician for some other artists, started in gospel, and now have kind of evolved into R&B and pop. So that's who I am in a nutshell.
Like a lot of industry professionals out there that have gotten their start in the music industry, Damon tells us how he got his start.
I was the drummer. I was a drummer, just kind of sitting back, trying to get my chance to play first. And I did that for a while, and then we moved from actually Gary, Indiana, because I grew up in Gary till I was 13 or 14. And we moved to Chicago, and when we did that, it was a ton of drummers always around. So my mom and my uncle always tell me that you have to try something else. So I pick up the bass guitar, and the line was a lot less long.
Okay.
So I did that for a while, and then all the time I was always learning to play keys. So just sitting watching other people do it and messing up at church and messing up other people's shows until I got it right, until people started to actually call me to do it. And then my dad became pastor probably when I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
Then he became pastor. He just asked me to come over and be his music director, and I did that. I did that for a while. When I say I did everything at my dad's church, I ran the sound, I taught the choir, played the organ, I played the bass. I did everything. We did everything. So that kind of taught me about leadership. Gave me a good sense of how to be a leader.
That was a good foundation too.
Absolutely.
And then you working for your dad because you're in the church, and he kind of gave you a huge responsibility, honestly. I mean, because the music, the worship is so important in the church and whatnot. So you don't want to put that kind of responsibility on someone who can't handle it. So
True.
It's great that your dad saw that in you and
True.
wanted to develop that.
There are some nuances that become too tight toward the end of the relationship with him. Working for your family, and then also leading for them. So it's like you're a little bit too close.
Right.
So
Right.
I had to step back for a minute and to really appreciate it. And it just became a point where I wanted my dad to just be my dad.
Right.
And then pastor be a pastor and my dad be my dad. That's what I wanted. So then that's probably where the transition started to come in, and I decided to move my family to Atlanta and try some different things.
Okay. So from Chicago to Gary to Atlanta.
Actually, the other way, Gary to Chicago to Atlanta.
Okay, sorry.
But yes, that's it.
So when you came to Atlanta, what did you have in mind that you really wanted to do once you got here?
I wanted to be the man.
Okay.
That's really what I wanted. I wanted to. I had a plan because, of course, I knew no one in Chicago. I had a few friends that I thought that were here, but I didn't know anybody. And I was getting kind of typecast as a pretty good musician. Mm-hmm. And once people know you as a pretty good musician, I wanted to be the songwriter, I wanted to be the producer. So they really wasn't taking me very seriously as that. They would let me engineer some sessions or something like that, but I wasn't getting the calls. And I recognized, the time was flowing. So I said, I'm gonna go somewhere where I can kind of reinvent myself. I can kind of put my name out and introduce myself how I want to be introduced. So I took a step out and put my resume together and my bio, and I sent it out to some people, and I connected. First, I got a job here at a church, which was my foundation that paid me on a weekly basis. Then I got a connection with Jan Smith. I ran her studio for about a year, I would say, but during that time, she showed me a lot. She kind of upped my game in a sense. Showed me what my pricing structure should be for charging artists, and started connecting me to people. I met Usher through her. Through that connection, I actually was able to produce for Justin Bieber. I produced a record for Justin Bieber because of that relationship, and that just kind of branched off from there, and then it kind of started to bloom from that. Well, the grind and hustle has kind of always been there, and it was funny. I was thinking about the same thing today. when you talk to people who do music, they always say like, let's work, let's get up and work, and let's work. And a lot of people have access to be able to do music. There is certain criteria that separate those who are successful from those who just are trying to do.
Okay.
And
What's the difference between the two?
those who are successful have a certain thing that they do, and I pay attention to it. I've sat in the studios and watched different artists, and after I've seen the success, it kind of frustrates me to go backwards.
Okay.
I'll give you for instance, like when we're doing writing sessions or production sessions. Those who are successful, you can always tell because they have a commanding presence in the room. It's like you when they walk in the room, you know they're there. It's whether they're quiet or not, there's something about the aura and who they are. They're very confident and they know who they are, and you have to give them some type of attention. That's the first thing. Secondly, they don't really question themselves a lot when they're in their work mode. So they're in the work mode, and you'll see what they do. Whatever they zone in and lose distractions. They tend to lose distraction, and they are high producers. Not just quality producers, but what I've learned is that you got to be able to call upon your gift and your craft at the important times. At the important times, it's like a runner. If you've been practicing all year and you can't show up at the meet,
Right.
you can't actually show up with your heart at the meet, then it's no good for all the practice. So your practice has to be to a point where it shows you, it can show up when it's needed. And those are things that the winners have, I believe. And I had to start to adapt those. And as hanging around other people who had it, I had to start to check myself, like, yo, I'm a little short here in these areas. So I do a thing where I develop myself. I totally into self-development on a constant basis.
I got the greatness of it. So let's talk about a different side here. Let's talk about what most people don't see in this industry. The long hours, the sacrifice that you make on a personal level as well, because I'm sure you have family.
Yes. And
they may not see daddy, or the wife may not see you as much as they probably would like to.
Sure.
But the sacrifice that goes in, let's talk about that.
Well, the sacrifice is great. I'm not sure that I would have recognized the total sacrifice. It's like if God would have shown me what it took to get to the end, I'm not sure I would have ran as fast.
Wow.
But there are some sacrifices in, and knowing that music is a situation or a business where it doesn't always pay you up front right away fast. You're not going to get it. It has extremely big highs and extremely big lows. So you have to find a sustaining thing, and I finally found my sustaining thing at one point, but it didn't mean that I didn't give up my grind. So there were times where I may have to start at 5 p.m. and then only finishing at 4 or 3 in the morning, or even with that, then you play your music that you did for people, and then they're like, well, I'm looking for this sound, I'm looking for this sound, I'm looking for this sound. You have to go back to the drawing board and try it again, and then by the time you get that sound out, and you get back and it's like, well, the sound is kind of changing now, we're doing this and this, until I just determined that, you know what, I'm not going to follow the trend, I'm going to try to create one. So I tried to find myself in my own sound, and instead of following what everyone else was doing, I think I found my niche, and I just figured out that I would work these hours, or would try from like 8 to 2, and let me say this, let me put a pin here, because I think the team of people that you work with makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference, because I was doing a lot of the grinding, but I was by myself. And it was pretty good, but when I had people who had great energy around me, it changed the game. It really changed the game.